And we're back with the show once again. This is Gerald coming right back at you here. It is right in the middle of it here. Week 1 is now upon us. We've already had the first game, and boy, was that a snoozer, between Philadelphia and Atlanta. My gosh, my numbers are already taking a toll already. But hey, it was ready. But I will tell you, we are good to go for the rest of the weekend in the first weekend of the NFL football scene. And who better to break it down with me with some of the major questions for fantasy owners before they really start to panic on that Sunday morning than my good friend. He is the guru of the Fantasy Football Pater podcast and also the Fantasy Football Pater podcast Facebook group. If you joined it today, it's a great place to go to talk about any trades, any waiver wire acquisitions, any lineup changes, and so much more. It is my good friend. It is Mr. Tyler Baker, who I hope is not leading. I haven't checked my scores yet, but I hope he's not leading as of yet. Because to give everybody an update, we're actually facing off against one another in week.
Yeah. I'm doing well, my friend. I'm so excited to see some football tonight. Now, being the first game of the season, it's almost like they were trying to wake up, trying to get out of the preseason mode. It's kind of a rough game tonight between the Falcons and the Eagles, but football's back. It's not going to take long for these teams to really start hitting their stride.
That's right. It's not going to take very long, but it did take at least 1 week for these two teams because they look pretty bad out there, especially the gazillion-dollar man, Matt Ryan. What was that all about?
You know what? I think that there was just some miscommunications. There were some opportunities missed, but you know what? The season's just getting started. These teams are, getting used to football, real football, the speed of the game. And I certainly saw some miscommunications between Julio Jones and Matt Ryan. And for the Falcons team, they really need to get that connection back. It was good to see Calvin Ridley on the field. I thought that they were going to get him the ball more. I did see some packages where he was in the game, and it looked like Ryan looked to him, but just didn't see it. Tevin Coleman was a bigger part of the game plan than I thought maybe he was going to be tonight. But you have to understand that the Falcons were going against a really good Philadelphia defense.
That they were. Philadelphia is rated out in most leagues as one of the top 3 or 4 defenses out there. So that was definitely didn't come as a surprise to see them having such a hard matchup. And same thing goes for the Atlanta Falcons as well. Their defense played very strongly against, even if there was a couple injuries, still a fairly successful and a fairly potent Philadelphia offense.
And it's so much fun to watch the ageless wonder Darryl Sproles doing what he does best. He's still quick. He's still fast.
Darren Sproles?
Yes. He's still quick, still fast, still a very, very smart and savvy football player. And I'm so glad he's back for another season.
I am as well. I thought that injury that he sustained last year was going to be done for him. But he's such an outstanding player. He'll never get the acclaim that he deserves, I think, because he never was really given the amount of work I think he should have deserved over the course of his career, probably because of his size. But I think he could have had the talent. Well, he did have the talent, in my opinion, to become a Hall of Famer. It just was, like I said, his size held him back in the eyes of probably a lot of individual people out there, coaches, players, that might have kept him back from achieving all that I thought he could have achieved in the NFL, which is kind of a shame because, like I said, talent-wise, I thought he was at times as almost good as anyone in the league from the running back position.
Absolutely, but his talent would have probably been lost on a team that tried to run him out there every week as just a running back. He is such a weapon. And the way he was used in San Diego, the way he was used in New Orleans, and now in Philadelphia, when you have a player like that, there are some things that he can do and only he can do. And that's why you hear guys like Tyreek Cohen are compared to Darren Sproles. And when you see these smaller guys, they always compare him to Darren Sproles. So Darren Sproles is just one of those unique talents, and there are things that only he can do on the football field.
This is true. And there's also another running back that I want to talk to you about, which also has some unique talents, which not many other running backs have been able to live up to or can live up to at this point in time. And that is Le'Veon Bell of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Someone who you, and a lot of other individuals out there thought he was going to be and is a top 3 player from the running back position in the league for fantasy owners. I thought he was going to have, I thought since this would be a contract year for him and that he was so mad with the situation with Pittsburgh, I thought he would come in, sign begrudgingly the franchise tag, and then go out and play the best ball of his life, play at an MVP level, and go and get a sweet contract somewhere else. Unfortunately, it does not look like it's been playing out like that. In fact, as of this recording here Thursday night, it appears that Le'Veon Bell may not even make the Week 1 roster.
Yeah, he's not going to play Week 1. I had limited reservations coming into this season because we saw this last season where he didn't want to sign his franchise tag, and he comes in the 11th hour, plays, and still had a great year. And a lot of people, myself included, thought that it was going to play out in a similar fashion this season. And even his teammates were expecting him to show up on Wednesday, but he did not show up on Wednesday. And that is not good. Honestly, that's not good for fantasy, of course, but that's not good, in my opinion, for Le'Veon Bell or for the Pittsburgh Steelers, because now you have a situation where I believe he eventually is going to come back. I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. Yesterday, his agent kind of took a hard stance, which that's what agents are supposed to do, is to put pressure on the team to give in to his demands. But it's at a point now where even when Le'Veon Bell comes back, he's not going to be in football shape. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are not going to be able to roll him out and give him 25 carries a game because he's going to be much more susceptible to injury at this point. And another huge detriment is that Le'Veon Bell's running style has a lot to do with the chemistry that he has with that offensive line. Le'Veon Bell has an absolutely unique running style in that he will go to the line of scrimmage, stop, wait for the hole to develop, and then hit it harder than anybody. But it's gotten to the point now where you have to, even though he's played with Pittsburgh for a long time and he knows he's offensive lineman, you still have to work on that chemistry. You still have to work on your timing to facilitate Le'Veon Bell's running style. And he's missed all of training camp, all of preseason, and now going into the regular season, he's not showing up. So this is going to be a detriment to the team. It's going to be a detriment to himself because you have to understand every single GM in the league is watching this situation. Every prospective team that he thought maybe he was going to sign with after he's done in Pittsburgh is looking at this situation. And you have to wonder if general managers are going to be inclined to give that huge contract to a guy who's not showing up and playing.
So this leads me to the question I want to ask you when it concerns fantasy football owners, my friend. And I'll just say this, it's kind of now an iffy situation for a lot of fantasy football owners that have Le'Veon Bell and now have to bench him. Or do they look to try and see if they can make a trade with someone? Because now is a time where a lot of people should, maybe are trying to hit the panic button and say, you know what, I want to trade Le'Veon Bell because now he might miss 2, 3, 4 games. He also might injure himself. He now may be more susceptible to an injury. He now may be more susceptible to not having a successful season because he's now going into the season where most likely he's going to miss at least 1, 2, if not more games.
Yeah, he's definitely going to miss week 1. He could miss more games. And even when he comes back, I would expect him to be eased in. Now, if you have him on your fantasy team, in my opinion, you have to ride out the storm. You spent a top 3 pick on him. You just kind of have to wait and see. Maybe you went to the waiver wire and you picked up James Conner. That's a good pickup, and James Conner is certainly playable, but do not expect the type of production that you were expecting from Le'Veon Bell from James Conner. It's just not going to be there. He's just not the same player, and he doesn't bring that same dynamic to the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. My advice and what I've done is I've tried to see if I could trade for him. And if you have depth at running back and you can kind of take a hit and you can trade away a player, I'm trying to trade Alex Collins, which is in no way equal to Le'Veon Bell, but there is so much uncertainty that you could probably pull a trade and get him. And if Le'Veon Bell is on your team for the second half of the season, you run a really good chance of making it to the playoffs and winning a championship. You're just going to have to ride out the storm. It's going to be probably a month. Even if he comes back next week, it's going to be a couple weeks of not getting the type of production that you would expect from Le'Veon Bell.
Once again, I'm on with Mr. Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Pay Dirt podcast. Our full episodes of our conversations are in full, and they can be found at the Pop Culture Cosmos channel right now on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and over 30 different podcast networks. You'll find 3 episodes in full that are already up there already on the channel. So check that out. You can hear his thoughts in full on a number of various fantasy football related subjects. One last thing to ask you, my friend, before we head on out, because I know it's almost sleepy time for you, my friend, there on the East Coast. I want to ask you, there's still, for a lot of fantasy football owners, some time to go ahead this weekend before the mass panic, like right at 8 Eastern time, or just before, kickoff the NFL week 1, where most of the games are being played this coming Sunday. What final steps or what final piece of advice do I have from you in regards to last minute setups, things of that nature, things you want to look over before you go ahead and finalize the rest of the roster that didn't play this Thursday night?
Yeah, well, if you have any questions about your specific team, you can send us an email. You can get on the Facebook group, Fantasy Football Pay Dirt Podcast group, and ask questions about your specific team and your specific league. One thing that I'm seeing, and because I have a lot of people that send me their rosters, hey, what do you think? I'm seeing what I would consider to be a lot of wasted spots on your bench. The basic roster construction is quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a flex, a tight end, and a defense, and a kicker. I recommend having, in addition to your starting lineup, having a good backup running back, a good backup wide receiver. And what I'm seeing is a lot of rosters that have guys like LeGarrette Blount on there. So, if you have a number 4 running back or number 4 wide receiver that you're never going to put in your lineup, I would recommend going and maybe taking a chance on some of these rookies out there. There's a couple rookie running backs in Indianapolis that could overtake Marlon Mack. There's Calvin Ridley. We didn't see much of him tonight. But some of these rookies, it's probably a good idea to get them on your roster, because we're not going to have any bye weeks until week 4, and the bye weeks really aren't going to start hitting until week 6, 7, 8, 9. So you have a couple weeks to kind of see if these rookies pan out. But if you have guys on your roster that, Garrett Blount's a great example. Could he get, a couple touchdowns? Sure. But are you ever going to put him in your starting lineup? No. So look at your roster and always have a backup for your starters. Always. That's always good. But if you have a roster spot or 2 where you're just kind of stacked up at a position with guys that you're just never going to play, why don't you drop those guys and go get one of these rookies? And if you want to take a screenshot of maybe some guys that are on your waiver wire and get on the Facebook group and let me take a look at it, then you run a much greater you have a much better chance of one of these rookies hitting and actually being a viable part of your team than to hold on to some of these players that are just never going to see your lineup.
Those are some pointed words indeed. Once again, it is Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Pater podcast. Full episodes of the Fantasy Football Pater podcast are now available on the Pop Culture Cosmos channel, exclusively on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and over 30 different podcast networks. My friend, I'd wish you good luck. Normally, I would wish you good luck this weekend, but since you're playing me and I'm off to not the best of starts because Nelson Aguilar was thrown and caught 8 balls, but managed to only get 4 yards a catch.
Yeah.
Really that great. I don't wish you the best of luck this weekend, but I wish everybody else the best of luck this weekend. But just know this, after Monday night, we will still be friends.
Yes, we will. Yes.
Oh, awesome indeed. Just glad to hear that. And there's no stabbing in the back here, right here on the Fantasy Football Pater podcast, or even right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. My friend, it's great to hear from you. Looking forward to a great weekend in the first full weekend in the NFL season. Just want to wish everyone the best, and hopefully we can get everyone out there to have a great time playing fantasy football this weekend.
Yes, and our next podcast, after we get some games, after we begin to see how this season is unfolding, then we're going to have some good, solid advice. And the first week waiver wires, the first couple weeks of the waiver wire are going to be really important. So I'm looking forward to this Sunday, watching some football, taking some notes. And Gerald, you and I will break it down for everybody the next time we meet.
Absolutely. And that's one that is definitely going to have not only part of it on the Pop Culture Cosmos show on Monday, but also an entire conversation in and of itself will be listed next week for the Fantasy Football Pater podcast. Just so looking forward to it, my friend. Just like I'm looking forward to coming back and beating you this weekend.
Good luck.
Believe me, I need it. Thanks, my friend. So glad to have you a part of the Fantasy Football Pater podcast, which is obviously your show that you created, and you do such a great job. Just so glad to be a part of it, and also just so glad to have you be a part of the Pop Culture Cosmos.